Okay, so we're back today for part two of the media training for the Olympics. Today is going to focus more on traditional media, meaning print media, broadcast media, radio. A lot of you have already done all of your pre-event, pre-Olympic media. This is what to expect in pre-race press conferences, post-press press conferences, and how to really leverage the attention best for you during the Olympic Games. So there's going to be 5 to 10,000 credentialed media in Rio. There's expected to be another 15,000 that are just here hoping to get a piece of the action. They've even set up a second media center where non-accredited media are able to go, trying to accommodate everyone. So that's really your opportunity to broadcast your story despite your results in Rio. So something to really think about as you're preparing for interviews is to give the reader something they don't see on television. Give them something that they haven't seen, they haven't read in a pre-race report so far. Everyone can tune into the race. They can make their own conclusions. The only reason they would read about it, as Nikki Michaelis, one of the top Olympic writers in the world, points out, is to get something else that they can't have seen. Why you made a call, what happened in the middle of that lap, what was the chatter going on in the middle of the fifth lap on the bike, those sorts of things. It's important to remember that you're one of 10,000 athletes in Rio. You're an Olympian, which means that you already have something interesting to share, but it's up to you how interesting you really make that story. Okay, so a few best practices just to get you prepared for some basic interviews here. Obviously, there will be a lot of Brazilian, a lot of South American media, of course, as well as massive amounts of media from your own country. But know the history of your sport. So just a few things to kind of get you started. Having a few talking points, know the history of your sport. So have a look through back the last few Olympic Games, know who won, know who came from behind in certain areas, know who had similar strengths that you have, know some things about the athletes that come specifically from your country so that if you're asked about it, you can speak intelligently about these things. It's also always, despite the Olympics or at a WTS race, World Cup, wherever you are, to know a few facts and general history of the country that you are in. Brazilians are incredibly proud people, as are many people. They're incredibly proud to be hosting the Olympics, and you will no doubt get questions about local food, and you could really impress them and really get great publicity for yourself if you know some of the local culture, some of the local history, some of the local celebrities, the food, the music, that sort of thing. So remember to be respectful of the host nation. You could try having a few words in Portuguese, knowing typical foods, places, and mention them in your conversations. Most of all, it's really your opportunity to tell your story. Okay, so a few do's to do in interviews. Of course, be polite, honest, prompt, smart, interesting, and informative. Take this up as an opportunity. If someone asks a question about how the course suits you, don't necessarily assume that they know that they're trade media, that they're triathlon media. These are Olympic beat journalists. In the last several years, especially in the last 4 to 8 years, newspapers specifically have slashed their budgets and have cut the amount of journalists that can come to the Olympics. So you've got one journalist that's going to 4 or 5 different sports. He or she might have been to 3 other sports that day, and you might get really stupid questions that you think are silly that you've been asked multiple times. Don't take it personally. They're trying to do their job the best, so help them out. A journalist is going to write a great story about you if you're patient with them and educate them a little bit. All the Olympians here have worked extremely hard to get to where they are, but they only train for one sport. So educate them on how difficult it is in triathlon, how much you train, the specificities of how you trained. If you really had to focus on one strength or weakness for your training, and choose not to speak in cliches. Try not to give canned answers. The more generic the answer that you give, the sooner a journalist is going to lose interest. They want to be able to share an interesting story that their readers will really dig into back at home. So help them tell your story, because ultimately that's what helps you. This is about helping yourself, not just about doing another random interview. All right, so a few questions to think about to help develop your story. And this goes back to developing your brand as an athlete, your brand as moving forward. Maybe you don't have to be the fastest athlete here, but you can be the most interesting. You can be the most personable. You can be the smartest. You can be the one that has the coolest habit. We always see stories come out of the Olympics from athletes that are not in Sochi. We saw athletes that were starting campaigns to save puppies on the street, and they are often more memorable than athletes that are winning gold medals. So take this as an opportunity to really be personable, to be who you are, and show the world that. So a few things: are you funny? Are you a nerd? Are you a mom? Or your sister? What is it that makes you who you are? And let that be known. Are you passionate? What are you passionate about outside of triathlon? Is it cooking? Is it coffee? Is it movies, the environment? Really turn the conversation towards those things that you're comfortable talking about, and you'll give a better interview. Something to think about when thinking about answers that you can give in interviews is what's something that a future partner would want to know about yourself. What is it that you want the world to know about you? Did you overcome anything significant on the road to Rio? Do you have any unique habits, rituals before race, after race? What is it that drove you to all those training days, and what keeps you going? Those are the questions that people want to get into. They want to get into the psyche of how someone can dedicate so much of their time in life to doing this, to being the best athletes in the world. Okay, don't be the basic don'ts. Don't be rude or insulting. Don't skip media interviews because of the result of your race. It is really just because you're upset, you're angry. It's okay to be emotional after a race. It's not okay to be insulting or rude. It's okay to show the emotion. In fact, it's quite good to show the human side of the anguish, of the pain, of the joy, of the triumph that goes along with being an elite athlete. Don't assume that media know triathlon jargon. Again, we talked about they have been covering multiple races for multiple days straight. Our races are at the end of the Olympics. They will be tired. So give them a little benefit of the doubt that they might also need a little bit of education. So try to avoid talking about your race as if you're talking to a triathlon specialist. Don't be scared. I think the number one thing is don't be scared of interviews. Just speak to them as if they're a person that you know, not necessarily a friend, but an acquaintance. They're trying to help you tell your story. Look at this as somebody that is just giving you a megaphone to reflect what you say. They're not trying to take something from you. So don't be afraid of doing interviews. And last but not least, don't go out at night in your team kit. It's never a good news story, and it always gets told. So remember that a bad race is still a chance to show the world who you are, a person with character, personality, and dignity. The way that you handle yourself after a race that goes badly can be just as telling and important as how you handle yourself when you win a race. So it's not over just because you're out of the race. Important things: what to expect post-race in the Olympics mixed zone. Just as the same as a World Triathlon Series race, but with a significantly more attention and a lot longer process. Of course, finish the race, and then you head into the mix zone, apart from the top three. Top three will usually do host broadcast, their country's top host broadcast, and then go directly to medal ceremonies. Go back to the mix zone, then to a press conference, and then family. So it's important to remember that if you're a top 3 athlete, you might not see your family for an hour or two, and then there could be anti-doping. So you might not get to see your family, immediately after your race to celebrate with them. You might have a press attaché that walks through with you, that will walk through the dedicated areas. You usually go to rights holders, then to print, and then it breaks off into print and radio by country. It doesn't mean that you won't be stopped by journalists from other countries. And you might be asked questions about other athletes and other people's races. So be prepared to speak both on yourself and on what happened during the race in general. You may need to stop multiple times, but take your time. This is your moment. This is what you've worked for so long, not only to push yourself to the absolute maximum, but to gain the recognition that you deserve for the amount of work and effort that you've put into